Here's one of my regrets. When I was 16, I was in high school in Germany, and we got this amazing opportunity to go on a class trip to Italy, right at the ocean.
So as you can imagine,
everybody was super excited. Although we needed at least 2 licensed lifeguards in our group
to actually
swim in the ocean.
Being a fairly good swimmer at the time,
so I volunteered. Hours and hours were spent in the pool, training and practicing for the exam. On the day of the test, the last activity was to dive deep down to the bottom of the pool and grab a tiny pink plastic ring. You know how some people do not like heights? I don't like anything deep. But the thought of having to explain to a group of 16-year-olds that all that was standing in their way of swimming in the ocean was this tiny pink ring was more terrifying. So I pushed through, I swam to the bottom of the pool, see the ring, grab it, push upwards, and already sense that something was very wrong. My right eardrum burst right there, and it was a trip to the hospital for me. Now, the good news is I did get my lifeguard license, and everybody got to swim in the ocean. However, it was only then and there I realized that I'm afraid of fish. Or rather, fish are not afraid of me. So if you ever want to go fishing, you do not need bait. You just need a Julia. So my regret is that I pushed myself to please others, and I did not see the bigger picture. I collected more regrets over the years and got really curious about the topic. Nowadays, as a professor in leadership, I teach courses on positive psychology, the good things in life.
As a management consultant,
I work with organizations creating better, positive workplaces. Today I'm going to talk about bad decision, negative thinking, and regrets. But let me show you why it might still be good to have a look at our regrets. On an individual level, research studies have shown that regrets can stay with us for years. On an organizational level, also employers have come across that maybe it might be a good thing to sometimes do a mistake and learn from it. So when I started my journey on learning more about regrets, I first looked into the general statistics. And guess what?
It tells you
that people
regret their finance, they regret their work,
they regret their partners,
and sometimes everything together,
but hopefully not all at once. Then I dig deeper, and I came across a study from a nurse who interviewed people towards the end of their life. One key finding was that people regretted having worked too much. I guess it's always good to do good work, but not too much. Still, what are you going to do with that insight right now? These findings are too far away for people in their quarter life, midlife, or three-quarter life. They only give us very broad categories, and they're not individualized. They don't lead to practice, action, or what I call a do-it-yourself better approach. I'm interested in exactly that. What do people do with regrets? I discovered that everybody has some sort of regrets, but what are you going to do about it?
Let me ask you 2 questions.
Thinking back about your work and life and your studies so far,
what is one thing
you regret you did do? And what is one thing you regret you didn't do? Keep thinking about those answers if you want, and I take you with me on one of the conversations I had with managers and students about the topic.
Let's call him John.
John is a student in France and studies business, is towards the end of his studies.
He came to me
because he has just received a job offer in Paris, but he does not know what to do. So we get talking and, asking him, well, what are your regrets? And I can see right now you're thinking, okay, she's teaching positive psychology, and the first thing she does is put people right on their regrets. But bear with me, we get there. So John keeps thinking, okay, well, I do regret that I focused too much on my studies. Oh, that's of course a regret as a professor. I have to say, no, we're going to keep that one. Focusing is good, focusing on studies. But then he says, I regret that I did not go to Australia when I wanted. So it turns out that John had always dreamed about going to Australia. He wanted to swim at Bondi Beach. He wanted to learn all about cricket and just experience how it is to be living somewhere else. Now, he was thinking about it quite a lot, and he shared, of course, also his dream with his parents. They were supportive, yet they wanted him to wait. To first build a basis, to first focus on the studies, to first have a foundation, and then the pandemic happened. And then all his plans were out the window. So John had unconsciously thought about these regrets for quite a while now. He was upset about it. He dwelled upon it. And he was just comparing himself to others and thought they might have better CVs than him. He felt so bad about it that he was about to say no to the great job offer in Paris, because it's just Paris. What is your regret? What is your Australia? I hope for you that the regret is not too bad, but maybe some of you are thinking, I really should have done this differently. Well, I was thinking, how can I still help John? So I thought back about my practical experience. And by then I had talked to about 500 managers and students about their regrets. Here are my two main observations. First, a regret is often linked to a so-called bad decision. So great, now you say, Julia, just give me a drop-down menu signaling which one is a bad decision, which one is a good one, and we're happy. Well, unfortunately, it is not that simple, because what can be seen as a bad decision really varies. We talked about John, who regretted not going overseas. But at the same time, I was talking to a 30-year-old manager who regretted exactly that, not staying in one spot. Or think about your studies. Maybe one of you regrets partying too much, the other one partying not enough. I don't know. Which one is it for you? My second observation. People regret more the things they did not do. Research studies have shown that a regret due to inaction is more likely linked with negative mental and physical impacts. For me, it's all about FOMO, the fear of missing out. So we create this ideal life in our imagination. So John was not seeing the shark attacks at Bondi Beach, or that cricket goes on forever and ever and ever. And no one really understands it, although that one might just be me, but... So we idolize what could have been. Don't get me wrong, I'm still all for going overseas, and I love Australia. But still, it's our perfect imagination. So in short, our regrets depend on perspective and is often linked to the grass is greener on the other side. Now, sharing these observations with John, sure, made him feel a little better because he was not alone. But still, he did not know what to do about the Paris offer. So I really had to amp up my game if I did not want John to regret having this conversation with me. So I thought back again, and I would say out of those 500 people, 495 had a similar approach. But there were only five people who did something vastly different. First things up front, and counterintuitively to what you might think, they were not better at making decisions. They were also not denying regrets. You know, those people who say, no, I don't have regrets, so I don't have to reflect upon that. But they were doing 3 things profoundly different. Number 1, they accepted the past and everything that came with it. So in terms of their behavior, they were able to know when to let go. Like a little dog who bites in the leg, these people knew when they were chewing on something not tasty, and they let it go. In terms of their feelings, they were inclusive to all their feelings, both positive and negative. And they were not all happy about their decision. But they accepted them and did not bottle them up. In terms of their thoughts, they were able to distinguish between the past and the future. So in hindsight, yes, we know more, but they were able to see
that they had done the best in the situation with what they had.
So what would you say to your best friend? Because somehow these 5 people were talking to themselves as if they were talking to a friend. And we are much more forgiving to our friends than to ourselves. Number 2, they were making sense of their regrets by linking it to others in the present. Now, what does that mean? They were grateful for what they received and could give to others due to a so-called bad decision.
And so,
because they were not only living in the past or only planning for the future, they were able to be mindful and present because our life is happening right here, right now. The counterweight to regrets are social connections, whether new ones or deeper ones, when it comes to friends or colleagues or family. So
when I was in a room with them,
I also felt more positive and hopeful. Their emotions were contagious. Do you know those people? They're very rare, but somehow they leave you inspired. Number 3, they were taking different actions for the future. Now, here you could just think,
okay, so now they're just doing the thing they were not doing in the past now.
But that does not always work because life has moved on. What they were changing was their beliefs, and they were changing them into more helpful beliefs. Now,
don't be disappointed if you don't belong
to those 5 people. We can replicate the process for you. If you want, think about your regrets, and here is what I was asking John. So my first question was, John, when it comes to the past, what can you accept?
That was really easy for John to answer. He said, look, no one could have foreseen
that the pandemic is coming and
the situation
changed, so I can accept that and let it go. My second question was, what are you grateful for in terms of social connections? This one was also still easy for John. And he said, look, I'm grateful I got to spend more time with my family and friends, joined some local clubs, so yes, that's good. My third and final question was, what will you change in terms of your beliefs for future decisions? And this one was very hard for John to answer. So he paused, he took a moment. And then he said, you know, I always looked for the approval of others. This time, I'm gonna listen to myself. And you know what? I still want new experiences. But going overseas is not the only way to get them. And I think Paris could give me exactly that. New experiences. John had made his decision. If we reverse the past to acceptance, the present to gratefulness, and the future to helpful beliefs, then we can turn regrets into change. We all have regrets, but the question is, what are you going to do about it? Thank you.